It's electric. It's electric. It's electric. All right, everyone. Welcome to It's Electric. It's electric. It's electric. It's electric. With your host, Afeez Kay.
Hi, welcome to It's Electric. I have a gentleman over here, probably the most hardworking gentleman I've ever met. His name is Lewis Black. And Lewis, introduce yourself to our audience.
So my name's Lewis Black, and I run an independent electric car dealership called eCars, based over in Wokingham in Berkshire, which is in the southeast, not too far from London. But so you run an independent EV dealership selling nearly new and used electric vehicles to my clients all over, generally the southeast or even the UK. I do go UK wide with my cars. But mainly I serve mainly obviously the used market, which is a really interesting market for EVs at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. But I think one of this, I guess probably the only question that comes to mind right now is why second-hand electric vehicles? Why did you decide to do that?
Why did I? Well,
especially the fact that EVs are about 2% of the market share.
Yeah, it's a very small percentage of the market, and especially with the data that was announced yesterday from the SMMT, which they announced. I think.
What is that? What does that stand? What do they do?
It's an organisation which tracks the amount of cars sold in the UK, both new and used. So they get data from all of the manufacturers, how many they've sold. And I think it was something like in 2017, I think it was something like 13,500 only pure electric vehicles were sold in the UK.
So this is not hybrid, just pure.
No, this is just
BEV.
pure BEV, electric vehicles, and that was one of the statistics that came out of it.
Yeah.
Which was still quite interesting. I think EVs, pure electric EVs, doubled in the last year. And they've been following that trend now since 2011, 2012, when they started really tracking EVs. But anyway, in terms of that number of 13,500 compared to the hundreds of thousands of petrol or diesel vehicles which are sold, EVs are still very, like you've just mentioned, this small minority in such a big market. And lots of the dealerships in the country are still focusing their sales on diesel and petrol cars.
So why are you focusing on just EV? I mean, is there something that you foresee that
Yes,
this market is going to grow?
Incredibly, in my last or just over 2 years of trading these vehicles, the market has changed exponentially. Like the last 6 months alone, I've just been everybody that I seem to talk to, family, friends, customers who come to buy my vehicles, they've all been considering an EV for the last 6 to 12 months. And for the next 6 to 12 months, going into 2018 into early 2019, they're all considering an EV or a PHEV as a real potential option as their next vehicle. There are some things which are holding EVs back a little bit, but we'll get onto that. But no, just generally used EVs they're a really interesting market because lots of people, it's also a bit of a generational thing as well, where people prefer to own a vehicle still over leasing a vehicle.
And actually, that's a good, I was going to ask you that, but carry on. I'm going to ask you that later on in terms of what is the percentage of ownership versus lease.
For me, majority of my customers all like to buy their vehicle outright. They are, I will say, they are probably in between the ages of 40 or 35, 40 and above. So that clearly shows to me it's a bit of a generational change where lots of my younger customers do prefer finance options. They look at what different leasing their options there are on the car. That maybe shows something in itself, especially in the used market and for the UK. I think in the used market in general in the UK, I think it was something I was speaking to a couple of industry professionals, and 70-80% of people lease their cars, so HP or PCP in the UK. However, with these used EVs, with my customers, of what I find, and I do about 2 to 3 vehicles a week, majority of them all like to buy their vehicle. with these used EVs, because there's some really great value EVs around. And we get onto what I think, in my opinion, are some of the better ones on the used market. But
Definitely.
so
Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about that. So I guess what I would just like to ask is, how is have you seen any trend? So you started this business. When did you start this business?
I started this business towards the end of 2015, beginning of 2016. Originally, it was just I'm quite a young person myself. I will comment my age. I probably don't sound anything like it, but I am actually 21 years of age. So,
I know, guys. Can you guys hear that? 21 years old.
Yeah, and one of the most popular reactions when people come to me in my showroom is I sound like a 30, 40-year-old bloke. It's terrible. But so they come to me and they see me and they think, oh, where's the owner? Oh, is your dad around or something? But that's quite a common reaction I get. But end of 2015, 2016, I set up, I was originally just trading EVs from home, just on Auto Trader, selling them privately, not under any brand. Originally, my father was looking for an electric vehicle, but we went out there and we spoke to lots of the Nissan dealers, BMW dealership, and other manufacturers. They just didn't care. And there was my dad has always had a thing of going to independent dealerships. And the reason why people tend to go to independents is because of the price, the more personal service. You generally get a bit of relatability with the independent EV dealer. They don't treat you like a number, they treat you as a person. And generally, the most important thing is their general knowledge is way better on the vehicles because they're a specialist normally.
Yeah.
And that's why they come to me. And as of end of 2015, 2016, there was no independent EV specialist around. I can name only one other independent EV specialist who's right at the top of Scotland. But in the UK, there was no one. So that's where I kind of saw an opportunity. And I was doing relatively quite well privately selling them myself. And I thought, right, let's give it a go. And I set up e-cars, and it's all just gone from there, really, just trading from home originally. And now I've got an indoor showroom over in Wokingham. I've got my cars, charging points, and also solar products as well, which people come and look at within a friendly atmosphere, under no pressure. I kind of buck the trend really of dealerships. It's more of like an information center really, and I just let people make their own educated decisions and go like that really. So
yeah, I mean, you mentioned earlier that one of the reasons why you or your dad prefer to go to independent dealership is because they generally have knowledge about the cars. Now, one thing that I found about EVs is that I remember about 18 months ago, or actually over 2 years ago, when I was looking to get an electric car. Now, before I actually got my BMW i3, I went to a Nissan dealership. I went to a Renault dealership, and I remember stepping into the Renault dealership, Northwest London Renault dealership, and I got the impression that they didn't really want me to buy the electric car.
I heard a lot about that, especially with the Renault dealerships. I heard about that a lot. Yeah,
I'm not sure if it's because of the lack of knowledge, or is it because they felt that they could make more money by selling.
Generally, in the new market, and especially franchise dealership, it's all about the targets. That's what it's all about. If they go with whatever is selling most, and as of 2 years or 18 months ago, when you were looking, even I found when we went out to look at, every now and then I always go around to lots of franchise dealerships and pretend I'm a customer to see how they're doing. But Renault were always one of the people who never really put any effort in towards the Renault Zoes. And what happened? Renault Zoes actually have been quite recently quite successful, but that's because people have found out better. So the 40 kilowatt and the some of the older Zoes, they kind of sold themselves. Even if the dealer is really poor, they've sold themselves. But no, what you've just said is very true, and it's a common thing I always hear. Even still, there are lots of dealerships in the UK who do not want to sell them. Their salesmen don't want to learn about them. They just want to hit target and whatever's making them the most bonuses.
Yeah, I mean, just to be fair to the dealers, obviously they need to make money. It's all about business.
No, they do, yes.
Yeah, they need to make money. So why do we think that electric cars are not profitable up to that point? Because one of the key advantages of an electric car is there's less moving parts, first of all. And because of less moving parts, they're less complicated and so on and so forth, And obviously, they're good for the environment, they're cheaper to own. You would think that people should be knocking at the dealership door and say, listen, I want one, I want one, and want one. So
Well,
is it because of lack of knowledge? Is it because of lack of awareness? What is the reason why
no,
you feel
you
that?
actually you just hit the nail on the head, but I'll explain why. It's the money, the profitability in EVs.
Mm-hmm.
So on new cars, generally new overused for a dealership, they generally tend to make less profit margins on a new car than they would over a used car.
Mm-hmm.
In the automotive world, there's generally more profit margin to be made on used vehicles. So when they sell a new electric vehicle and there's less margin, it's all about just hitting numbers and earning the bonuses. And the one thing that you touched upon there as well was EVs require less servicing and repairs generally because of the less mechanical moving parts. Because there's less mechanical moving parts and there's less things to go wrong in the future. Well, one of the big things franchise dealerships rely upon is their servicing department and parts department.
Absolutely.
And what happens is with these electric cars, because they're so reliable and they just do not break or they don't have many issues, simply there's just less money to make in the long run over these cars over a standard internal combustion engine vehicle because there's just less things to go wrong. So actually what lots of these franchise dealerships actually have with these EVs when it comes to maintenance, it's mainly just recalls and quality enhancements, but they're not earning any money from that. They're just charging the manufacturer, but there's no other servicing and repair. Maybe they sell tires or and also the other thing was servicing of EVs is a lot cheaper. So at £100 for a service of a Nissan Leaf, there's not much money to be made there. Where on an internal combustion engine vehicle, they might charge for a service £300, £400, £500 for a service.
So
much more profitability there.
Absolutely. And what do you need to be a certified electric vehicle service center?
This is the thing.
You should know this, right? Because I believe you are certified to actually service electric cars. Right?
I am. It's a bit of it's going to be a very, very new emerging market in EV servicing. It's a real minefield.
What do you do? Do you just change the wiper fluids or something? Because well, obviously there is the brake pads, which you can get done elsewhere. So you don't need to be an EV expert to do that, right?
No, you don't. You literally, most members of the public, if they want to get a Nissan checklist, or whatever manufacturer checklist, it is really, really simple. I've actually done a Nissan Leaf service in 55 minutes before. So if you're an actual professional, and I do not have any real skills in maintenance of these vehicles. I'm not like garage trained or anything like that. It's just following my common sense more than anything. Just reading a few online forums and picking up tips and going along the checklist. But these Nissan people, they do their servicing in normally like 30 minutes or something. By the time you've taken the car in, they call you up within an hour saying the vehicle's done.
And how much do they normally charge for that?
Well, I'm going to use Nissan as an example, the Nissan Leaf, and I'll give you an example of BMW. The Nissan Leaf, they charge, I think, for a minor service, £129, and for a major, it's £159.
So, are we talking about e-cars here, or just internal combustion engine, like normal cars?
No, we're talking about pure battery electric vehicles.
Okay, so normal.
So the Nissan Leaf, one of the most popular EVs in the UK.
Yeah.
129 for a minor and 159 for a major. But the differences are in the minor, it's mainly all just visual checks, and the windscreen washer fluid, like you mentioned, it's like a more advanced level of an MOT. Where the major service is when they start doing things like the fluid changes, like the brake fluid and coolant and stuff like that. It's and that's all they do extra. I'm sure there is a lot more to it. When I've actually looked at their list, it's about 100, 120 point check. But that check, they just tick through them super quickly, and even I've done it, and it's basic checks. So you could actually do it yourself. But coming on to the point about independent EV servicing, I've now signed up. Well, I became part of an organisation called HEFRA, which is the Hybrid and Electric Vehicle Repair Alliance, and there is actually lots of electric vehicle training out there for garages and whatnot, but it's all very basic. However, this organisation called HEFRA, which I'm part of, and I've done their courses, there was a guy who works in the garage industry, but he spotted there was an opportunity to really develop EV servicing and training for garage workers, etc., and give a more advanced level course. and I've now taken it. I was the first person on his course, and what I will be doing is with my electric vehicles, I'll be able to offer independent electric vehicle servicing at a much reduced price, which is going to be a bit of a game changer, really, because there's nothing stopping independents working on electric vehicles. Some people get really scared, saying, oh no, the manufacturer's warranties are invalidated if you don't get it done by the manufacturer. There are things that I would have to do as an independent, so I do have to use genuine manufacturer parts, or if there's recalls, I have to follow a certain protocol and procedures, and I have to subscribe to their databases and things like that. But that's available to all independent garages, and you can do it. It's just you have to prove that you're competent and you have the experience under EU legislation that you can actually work competently and safely in these vehicles, and you have experience with EVs, which is what we have, or that's what I have at eCars. And I'm sure that, but the biggest thing with EV servicing and repairs, or the biggest market for it, is going to be battery reconditioning and battery repairs in the long run, especially on the older electric vehicles on the market, which are really good value, like the Zoe or the Leaf, where they start at £4,000-5,000 for an EV.
So what you're saying there is, so for a battery pack like the Zoe, we're talking about the 40 kilowatt hour Zoe, it costs about £5,000 to replace it?
There is no...
Or roundabout?
Around, well, I think it's a lot more than that. I think you're nearing towards the double figures. There is not really any official figures out there as such, but people do. I have read what people have heard of what they... But no, generally, I think batteries at the moment are between the £5,000 to £10,000 level. I always read when people go to these scrappage auctions. There's some really famous ones like Copart, and you get like Category D Leafs, which have been in big smashes, and the values of the batteries, the car has still been worth £2,000-3,000 because of the value of the batteries. But the rest of the car is worth absolutely nothing. It's just the batteries which are worth a couple of £1,000s. So there is some value in the battery. So when they're new, I think I did read upon that BMW were going to be doing well, they were doing it over in Germany, that people could swap over the 60 amp hour battery to the 94, and they were going to cut. I think I read they were going to charge €7,000 to €8,000 for that conversion. So that gives you a kind of guide price. So yeah, maybe I think between that £5,000 to £10,000 level, but that is always decreasing. One of the stories that I always heard was, or that I do always get that question: how much does it cost to replace the batteries and whatever? Yeah. And Nissan were saying on their batteries, if their batteries fall below a certain level, I think it was 9 bars out of 12, then they'll replace them. But even if you've got a battery with 10 bars or something like that, again, I remember Nissan, I spoke to one of the EV specialists at Nissan, and he was saying, yeah, the batteries were above £5,000 or so.
I mean, if I could just earlier, I thought about a question to ask you, but now it just came back to my mind is, what are some of the reasons why people come to your shop or to your showroom to buy electric cars? Obviously, I'm guessing something changed their mind from switching from a normal internal combustion engine to a BEV. What are the top 3 or top 4, if you can, reasons that you get given?
So, well, number 1 is price of my vehicles over the main dealerships. Generally, as an independent, my margins tend to be a lot less because my costs are less, and also because of my experience and contacts within the industry, I'm able to pick up some really good value, or some good vehicles at really great value. So the price of my vehicles, for a start. So I don't know, Nissan's vehicles generally tend to command a very high markup. So I don't know, there was a car yesterday that I sold. It was a 30 kilowatt hour Tecna 6.6, and I had that car up at 16,000. A Nissan dealer would have had that up at 18,000, for example, the equivalent vehicle. So that's one reason, is price. Secondly, it's I would say my expert knowledge on the vehicles. And because I'm an EV specialist, it's all I deal with. I don't deal with any petrol or diesel vehicles. And so they come from my expert advice. And thirdly is because they've had I always hear it every time, but they have had they've had poor experiences dealing with other dealerships. So I think we touched upon it earlier, like the salesman, generally in the industry, the automotive world in the UK is still very old fashioned. You still get old 40-year-old male or or older male salesmen who want to do a deal and they're not willing to haggle and they have to go to the manager to get more money off, and it's just a real horrible process for people going into main dealers. But also they don't know what they're talking about either, so they give out the misinformation. But that's oh my god, the misinformation out there that I hear. I hear things like the batteries, like they're lithium-ion batteries, for example, in most electric cars. I hear things they don't even know what the batteries are made out of and how they're constructed. You hear things. The biggest thing is range. So they, Nissan really do stick to their guns about C figures of Nissan Leafs. Everybody knows that's not the case. So I think they claim like 155 miles on a 30 kilowatt, when everybody knows that on a motorway you only really get 100 to 105, maybe 110 at a push, and then around town you'll get about 115, 120. And then probably in the summer 130. So that there's lots of things that they claim.
Misconceptions.
And the people come to me and they feel refreshed because I give them the right information and I don't lie. There's no gimmicks. And I'm just an honest and transparent dealer. I really do. I am trying to stay away from the word dealer so I'm very much. I'm an EV centre. I give impartial advice, but I give the right advice and very relatable. So people come to me because of my experiences in these electric vehicles. I can really talk about it because I actually practice what I preach. I drive these electric vehicles on a day in, day out basis.
Actually, that's a good point. Do you think if you were to go to a dealer, and I guess you're more likely to trust a dealer that actually own one of these cars?
Yes.
Because imagine if I was this, buy an electric car. I have no idea how it works, how we are charged, some of the characteristics of an electric car. I'm more likely to trust someone that actually drives this and use it as a daily drive.
Yes.
And I think that's probably one of the things that I found as well, because if I'm going to be giving advice on something, I need to have prior knowledge of it. And maybe some of the dealers out there don't have knowledge of cars that they've been.
And also, one thing that customers do pick up on with me is my confidence in talking about the product. So I know exactly what I'm talking about. I practice what I preach. And when I'm talking to the customers, they believe what I'm saying, and because of what I know, what I'm saying is right. Lots of dealers will just make something up off the spot. They're just, I don't know, pick something out of the air, and it's all just. And the reason why, another reason, lots of the customers I have are very well researched individuals because they don't necessarily know what they're. Originally when they first start looking into the vehicles, they're at a bit of a disadvantage because they're going into the unknown. So lots of my customers actually do a lot of their own research before they turn up, which is so all they're doing. So when they actually go to lots of the Nissan dealerships, BMW or other manufacturers, they actually know more than the salesman, which is...
And that could be quite an issue, because I think what you then find, maybe this is probably one of the reasons why the dealers don't want to sell them, because they feel a little bit powerless. They don't, you as a dealer, you expect to know more about the cars, but when your customers coming onto the showroom, do you think maybe the franchises need to give some sort of courses on electric cars to?
I just think they need to give everybody salesmen they need to give them all an electric car. That's all they need to do.
Because the best way you can really know about these cars is when you just drive one.
It's by you just driving them, not by a 30-minute or 1 hour training course that they have to complete in a back office on a computer system and reading facts and figures. They have to really learn. Like, for example, one of the biggest things with electric vehicle driving is driving efficiently and how you drive eco. That's one of the biggest things. And if you know how the car drives and what range it does and any little tips and tricks about the cars, of what it all really contributes to the buyer's buying experience, because they've read all the figures off of online, they understand all the figures, they know all the specs, they know all of that. What they want is the actual relatability of what it's realistically like to have an EV. So when they do come to me and we go out on our extended test drives, and I actually, they're not even really test drives. I just let the customers, we go out for as long as they possibly want to, and they can come back as many times as they want to test drive the vehicle. And we go around and I talk to them about the car and what they can be doing, not just selling them the car, but sort of selling them almost like a lifestyle almost. So I'm talking about how you can really get the most out of your electric vehicle, and then also talking about like the charging infrastructure and the network, and they like that.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned about how to drive your car, how to get the best out of your electric car, and how to make it last longer. But when do you foresee that paradigm shift from because most people are put off by the fact that you need to drive eco. Some people just want to drive; they don't want to care about the range
Yeah,
or
no,
the
that's
yeah,
correct.
yeah, exactly. So when do you foresee that you will start being able to stock electric cars that can do 200 miles and above with your experience of the secondhand market? Because I'm sure when you started, you had let's say the first generation Leaf. Now you're talking about 30 kilowatts. What is the trend from I mean, how do you see that trend going? When do you think we can get the 200 miles range electric cars as secondhand cars?
Well, on the used market, the only real options out there for that kind of vehicle is the Tesla Model S, to be honest, or the BMW i3 range extender, which does get close. But obviously, the range extender is a little bit of a cop out because you have only got 90 to 100 miles on electric, and then if you do want to get up to the higher figures, then you do have to use the range extender,
which is still about 13 grams. Yeah, 13 grams
yeah, no, it's
per
still
kilometer,
low, but
which is
you're still
pretty
having,
low
you're still
compared
having
to some other cars out there.
you're still having to use petrol though, unfortunately, and which isn't. But so the only real options out there at the moment is the i3 range extender or the Tesla Model S. There are new things coming out, as we know, in 2018, leading into 2019, which will be able to do that, and that's why people were saying that when is it going to be the year for EVs? In terms of the used market, the year for EVs, I think, is going to be this year. I've always kind of said that. But so for the used market, your question for 200-mile range used EVs, we're still looking at another year or two away before we get cars where people can just jump in the car, it's comfortable, they don't have to worry about range, there's no range anxiety. So for the used market, that's still a little bit of time away. However, where the used market is so good is, one of the things that people always forget, and people always like go on and on about 200-mile range, 200-mile range. But when you actually, well, this is something I do when I actually diagnose their actual lifestyle a little bit. I say to them, right, what do you actually drive in a day? And they go, oh no, we only drive 20 miles. you could pretty much have most of the EVs out there on the market, because their round trip is only, I don't know, 10 miles each way, or
Absolutely.
40 miles round trip, 60
Yeah.
miles out round trip. You can actually still have the majority of the vehicles on the used market. It's just people have got this thing in their head that they need to perform at exactly the same rate as the current, your current petrol or diesel vehicle. And to be honest, I don't actually, I don't complain about that. That's a fair enough point. I think vehicles do need to, they do need to be able to do 200-300 miles without. But the one thing then I always reiterate to people is, well, what you have to remember is the place that you come to every night is your home, and that then suddenly becomes your charging station. So is it really that much of a hassle of just plugging in? Don't have to plug in every night, but maybe once every 2 or 3 nights. Is it really that much of a hassle for 10 seconds to just plug a car into and then put it on charge and leave it overnight, and you wake up the next morning and it's 100% again?
Yeah, I think it's more of a lifestyle change that people just need to realize, because everyone is, we're all used to just taking our car to the petrol station,
Yes,
filling
and
it up,
filling up with
5 minutes, 10 minutes, and it's that, and that is what people expect. That, oh well, this is what I'm used to. This is what I feel is convenient for me, and if I'm to buy an electric car, it needs to be able to match those criteria. Now, as you clearly said, that it actually takes you less time to plug in your car at night, which is about what, 5 seconds to about 10 seconds, just plug it in.
Yeah, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 seconds.
Exactly. And so I think if people start thinking about electric cars less of the normal cars, a normal car as an internal combustion engine cars, and more of as a device, as an appliance, just like your mobile phone. Every night you come home, you charge, you plug in your phone. By the time you wake up in the morning, it's fully charged. So if you treat your electric car like that, you wouldn't feel that you need to change your lifestyle drastically.
No.
You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
I'll
just touch upon it while I've just got it in my head. One of the biggest things that, so with an electric vehicle, some people say with the lower range ones, you do have to compromise, but it comes to, and eventually you will get to a point where you won't compromise. But one of the biggest things is, if you're going to have a lower range vehicle, maybe look at the other side. Look at how much money that you're saving by running an electric vehicle. So if you do just use it like your mobile phone, and charging it every night, it's not costing you 50, 60, 70, 80 pounds down at the fuel pump to do
Absolutely.
400 or 500 miles. But for every 100 miles you do in an EV,
Yeah.
you're looking at £1.50 to £2 for every 100 miles. So if you extrapolate that, you generally find it's anywhere from 8 to 10 times cheaper to run an EV. So to me, it's a bit of a no-brainer. Do I compromise a little bit? But look how much freaking money I'm saving.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you mentioned about about saving money here, and don't also forget that there's some generous incentives as well to drive an electric car.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
I mean, one of which that I find, as an electric car owner myself is, the road tax. I don't pay road tax.
Zero road tax. If you do have an EV within London, obviously the London congestion charge zone, which is a big saving.
Yeah. I mean, I paid £10 for the entire year. I think, I don't. It's more of a registration. So I pay £10 registration, and I can drive into central London how many times I want.
Yeah, but also I think in London as well, don't you get the car parking, don't you? Especially within the city and
I mean,
Chelsea and all them boroughs where it's
I think
just do it on your phone.
Yeah, in some boroughs you can park at a charging station for about 4 hours. So that's almost like 4 hours free parking as you're charging. So it's incredible, and I think this is one thing that people need to realize, that don't think of electric cars as your normal car. Take electric cars for what they are and look at the benefits. They are increasingly getting better. The range is increasingly getting better.
They are. They're improving EVs, and they're improving every 6 months to a year. There's always a new or facelifted model that's coming out. They are improving, but there are things which are still drawing them back.
Like what? Like tell me one of those things that you feel are still drawing them back.
One of the things that I always find what's drawing them back is it's new. It's the cost of them, which is where actually for me it works quite well, because people like buying used second-hand EVs because they are a lot cheaper.
Yeah, but why are they expensive though? Because if you dissect an electric car, what is it? It's probably about what? You've got the battery, you got the controller, you got the onboard charger, probably one or two other parts that are missing. Why is it so expensive? Obviously the battery itself, but then again, an engine is also expensive as well. But if you take away the battery, you cannot. Actually, that's not fair.
Well, what it is, it's mainly most of the manufacturers actually.
Yeah.
Lots of their EV products, they don't actually make a profit on these cars overall. There's only a very few manufacturers that have actually made a profit on these vehicles overall in the long run. Most of these cars, especially a few years ago, lots of these cars were just a compliance car because they had to do them. Like the Vauxhall Ampera was a compliance car. The only people who really made a success of these electric cars is Nissan and BMW, because they've had the numbers. Or because they've done the numbers, it's economies of scale. If they're selling, I don't know, the Nissan Micra, and they do hundreds of thousands, or I don't know, the most popular vehicle, the Ford Fiesta. It's an economies of scale thing. They're able to churn that vehicle out. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Ford Fiestas are on the road, so they're cheaper to cost, which is why they cost less new. Where these Nissan Leafs, they've only churned out I don't know, I think it's 30 or 40,000. I stand to be corrected on that one, but it's very, very small numbers compared to other makes and models or the petrol or diesel equivalents in the UK market.
Yeah, I mean, worldwide, I think the Nissan Leaf is the
So Nissan
electric car. 200,000 so far.
Then you look at the other models, Renault Zoes. They haven't sold many.
I am surprised with the. Actually, I'm going to ask you this about the Renault Zoe, the long range and comparison between the long range and.
I knew you were going to ask me probably about the vehicles in a minute of what I thought was.
I will. Don't worry, it's coming.
And I've got a list in my head, and I'm dreading the question because I'm really stuck. Like, I've got one definite contender up there, and it is the best. But I'm stuck. Like, I don't know. There's 4 out there, and I'm truly struggling to put them into.
You know what? Why don't we just go straight to right now? All right. So basically, right, I'll tell you something. So I have my favorite electric car at the moment is the BMW i3 range extender. I'm just gonna say I'll tell you why, because
that's no surprise.
Yeah, I think you can talk about the Teslas all day long. They're fast, blah, 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 but I need to look at my use case, and my use case as a Londoner is I don't drive that often, maybe about 20, 30 miles.
Before you say anything, can we just point out, for the
Yeah.
sake of the podcast, that I think
Uh-huh.
he is a BMW i3 owner.
Uh-huh.
So there is a bit of a, no, I'm not going to say it. There might be a little bit of complacency coming out here. But so with me, I'm very impartial. I drive all these different types of EVs. But go on, Afeez. Let's hear about the i3.
Okay. So for me, the i3 I think is the best electric car to get if you're looking for second-hand electric car. One, because the range is sufficient enough, and if you have the larger battery size, that will get you about 125 miles. Obviously, depending on how fast you drive and so. But let's just on average about 125 miles. That is plenty enough for my use case as a Londoner, right? And if sometimes I do need to travel outside London, so I've got the backup of the range extender as well. Which then, if you add on that 80 miles on top, so we're talking about over 200 miles. So it's past that magic range where range anxiety doesn't matter anymore. Now, I hardly ever use my range extender, but once a month or so, if I do need to travel outside London, I can use the range extender because I know I've got it as backup. I'm not saying that I will use it when I'm traveling outside London. If I get to a charging station and it's completely packed, then I know I've got that backup. That's one. So in terms of the drivability, so I like my cars to feel agile. And the i3 to me feels very agile, very responsive. And the turning circle is pretty good.
It's perfect for you and your lifestyle, but also
Exactly.
I always find that vehicles match the personalities of their owners a little bit. And the i3 is you, Afeez. It matches you perfectly, and I do find,
it's responsive, it's quick.
When I have my Tesla owners, there's most people. They're a certain type of person. My Nissan Leaf owners come from a certain walk of life. The Zoe owners come from a different walk of life.
Yeah.
So that does play a little bit of an element in it, I find.
Yeah. So that's me. So I guess maybe we could probably play a game over here. So there's a BMW i3 owner, and if I could say describe a Nissan Leaf owner to me, what is their persona? A persona of a Nissan Leaf.
The Nissan Leaf is what you would call Mr. Average. He has a wife. He has two lovely kids, one daughter, one son. They live in a normal, I don't know, 2 or 3 bed, semi-detached house. The guy works for a corporate company, and the wife is the standard housewife or house husband in this case. Let's get this right here. There's none of that going on here. So the roles can be flip reverse. I don't mind. That is your general Nissan Leaf owner.
What about Renault Zoe?
Renault Zoe owners, oh God, I'm really sure. I really do not want to offend or do anything, but
go ahead.
The Renault Zoe owners, I generally find they're a little bit more nerdy, a little bit more. Actually, no, not nerdy. They're just a little bit more. They always have good opinions. They're very well intellected, or because generally what you find with the Zoe owners are very well researched. Because the Zoe is one hell of a. It's a bit of a minefield altogether. The Zoe. It does take a bit of research and persistence to really understand a Zoe.
Especially with the charging, the onboard charger.
Especially with the charging, and the different models and the battery DC over battery owned. So it does require a certain type of intellect of person to be able to get all of that. But the Zoe can actually be really easily explained. It's just, I generally find they're very well researched, well intellected people, but they're also looking for a bargain and a good saving. The Renault Zoe is one of the cheapest ones on the market. I've seen all different types of people in Zoes. I've seen people from the young all the way up to the older generation. You don't have like a certain type of age bracket. The Zoe is very open, but yeah, that's my description of Zoe owners anyway. And I'm sure well, I don't know. That's what I find when I meet lots of Zoe owners.
What about Tesla owners? I know this would be the last car I ask you to put persona against. So we've got a BMW i3 owner, which are basically more like Londoners, and you said me. That kind of person. People that enjoy driving the cars and prefer responsiveness over. Probably.
Actually, and as well as the BMW owners, I do generally find lots of the BMW owners who buy an i3 off of me, they are generally brand loyal. So they've either had BMWs in the past or they like the brand of BMW.
Oh my God,
So
that is me. I used to have a BMW 330i, 330 injection, three
well,
liter.
that's also one other thing about the i3s that I do tend to find. But the Tesla owners, it's a really interesting one. It's a mixed bag for obvious reasons. They do tend to be a little bit more money, as we know. So you do have to be able to have a certain type, they have a certain type of lifestyle, or they're able to afford a Tesla owner. A lot for the forums I read and comments on the Facebook groups, they do tend to be a little bit more of the upper class, let's say, because they've either earned their money or I don't know what. They just tend to be a bit more of the upper class generation. But also, I always find again, I'm actually referring back to this point again. It's brand loyalty. Tesla, I call them like Tesla or Elon Musk fanboys. They followed the Tesla story. They have shares in Tesla.
Hmm.
They've got a reservation normally for the Model 3 as well. They own an S. The wife owns an X. Like that type of thing. They're just Tesla through and through. They've probably got an order for a power wall. They're probably going to have solar tiles as well. They just live and breathe Tesla. That's what I find. The majority of the Tesla owners are. Once they get hooked on Tesla, that's it. There's no coming out. You're in the Elon Musk bubble for however long that you may be in that bubble for.
I think you mentioned about the different personas. Obviously, the BMW i3 owners. I usually probably former BMW owners before, and I just transferred to the i3. One of the cars out of the four there, I think those are the four most popular secondhand cars on the market right now. But one thing that surprises me, and a car that I think is being very underrated, is the Zoe, the 40 kilowatt hour Zoe.
Yes.
Now I drove the Zoe from Paris to London almost on one charge. So when they do say that the Renault Zoe long range 40 kilowatt hour battery pack has about 180 to 186 miles of range, I can testify to that. Now what I don't get is, the new Nissan Leaf that just came out right now has 150 miles range.
Mm-hmm.
And this is seen as, oh, well, the car is supposed to capture the market between the expensive Tesla and the lower range, cars like the i3. But the Zoe has already done that. So why there's so much fuss over the new Nissan Leaf, which has 150 miles, and the Zoe, which already has 186 miles of range?
If you actually look at the numbers for the Zoe, I think the Zoe 40 kilowatt is actually one of the most popular EVs on the market at the moment. So I'd probably go against what you just said a little bit, but they're just very underrated, and people just don't talk about them enough. However, there are actually lots of people on the new market. I think they've actually done one of the highest numbers in 2017 in terms of the Renault Zoe. I'm just trying to have a look at the moment what the Renault Zoe numbers are at for the 2017, or see if there's any statistics out there. But I think if you actually look into it, the Zoe is one of the most popular vehicles of 2017, especially the 40 kilowatt. The problem is, I think what I found, especially when reading various sources or forums or groups,
which are mostly from the USA, from America. And I don't think that the Zoe long range is either not in the USA or maybe it's in very, very selected areas.
I'm going to talk about mainly the UK market. And the reason why is because the UK actually has one of the biggest Zoe owners groups, well, it has the biggest Zoe owners group in Europe. I think it's over like 2,500, 3,000 members. I'm sure Craig Tong of the Renault Zoe Owners Club will correct me on that, of how many members they've got if he's listening to this. But I think I was going to touch upon it. The reason why is because the Zoe has such a long lead time. From what I've seen, they have like lots of these, the most popular EVs on the market. They all have a ridiculously long lead time. So the Zoe has a long lead time if you want to get one new. If you want one of the more popular desired models, the Hyundai Ioniq has like a 9-10 month waiting list.
That's a great car, by the way. Great
car, I know. But they just can't make enough of them. They just underestimated what they thought they were going to sell. Volkswagen GTE, which is the PHEV, well, just a plug-in hybrid. The GTE, they've actually did you see that in the news yesterday? They've stopped taking orders for the GTE because it's simply just been too popular, and they can't. They've
I
got like
heard, I
a
actually
nine,
heard,
10 month waiting list.
yeah, I actually heard that the e-Golf, which is the BEV version of the Golf, that VW have actually doubled their production levels.
Yeah,
Or they're planning to scale up to twice. So that,
yeah,
of what,
incredible.
yeah. And I think that I still think that the manufacturers, I'm talking about the big manufacturers like the VWs and the BMWs, are still underestimating the public's appetite for BEV, for
Yeah,
battery electric vehicles. And I still believe that they still don't quite understand the magnitude of, the fact that people actually want these cars.
yeah.
And you mentioned, the GTE, for example. That is a great PHEV car that I've had
Yeah,
the
no,
pleasure of
it's
actually
really good.
driving.
Range is relatively quite good, especially for people who do short distances. So, and it looks like obviously it's like a golf shape. I think 30 or 40 miles, very very similar to like well in the used market. I'll tell you about a little bit about the Ampera. Oh my God, what a great vehicle that Vauxhall made. They just they just messed up on everything in terms of the great vehicle, but they just marketed it and advertised it horribly. But it's actually one of the most underrated EVs on the market.
Mm,
They still sell it in the US under the Chevrolet Volt brand,
mm,
but
mm,
then I think we can get on to like from going from the Ampera. Like there
hmm.
was supposed to be that new Ampera E, which is out in Europe.
Yes.
But oh my God, if they had brought that to the UK,
I don't think
what
they're going to do it
they're not.
because they're
Well,
not. Yeah, they're not. It's not going to be
uh,
available in right-hand drive.
no, no, that was yeah, but they're
Oh,
doing it. But if they had made that right-hand drive and brought it to the UK, literally, I remember talking about it with loads of owners. They said, "Oh yeah, have you heard about this Ampera E? When's that
mm,
coming?"
mm,
And then I've just had to say, "Sorry, it's not." And they said, "Oh, we saw it on the internet and websites for research that it's going to do this and it's going to cost this." And I just said, "Well, no, it's not coming to the UK.
mm, mm.
Can't do anything about that." But
Wow, that is such a pity. Talking about the Ampere E, the range of the Ampere E, and I mentioned this is in another
yeah, because
podcast.
it's not the Chevrolet, but it's the Chevrolet Bolt, isn't it?
Bolt, yeah, it's on a
Bolt,
Bolt. So
that's
yeah,
the one.
Bolt in America and Ampere E in Europe. There is a favorite YouTuber of mine called Beyond Nayland, and
Yeah,
he was in South Korea and he drove about. He was able to get 260, 270 miles out of a 60 kilowatt hour battery pack from
yeah.
that car.
And one of
260 miles.
I know, and one of the things, it actually just looks like a normal car. It doesn't.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest things that lots of the owners that come to me mention, or
Mm-hmm.
sorry, not owners, but clients and
Um,
customers.
mm,
They all say they just want an electric vehicle that they don't mind it making it looks a little bit quirky and it's a bit of a different shape but they just don't want electric cars to look unusual and just not nice looking. Oh what else? Oh, I think we came across this when we did an event together a few weeks or
mm.
they don't want them to look
Unusual.
what's the word? No, yeah, unusual is the word, but there's a better word for it. They don't want to look like they're
Avant-garde.
yeah, they don't want to look like they're driving something that just looks utterly ridiculous. They just want, they don't
Like,
mind it being a bit
look at me and
quirky and a
driving a
little bit
electric car.
edgy. They just don't want it to look stupid.
Mm,
So
mm.
like one of the things, like I remember when you got like the iNev and the Ion, it's like a little bubble car, but it looks absolutely ridiculous.
But you know what? I also think that, talking about personas, you mentioned that most of the, customers that you get probably around between 35 years old and upwards. Could it be that the younger generation, 25, 21, your age, are they looking for something that looks a bit more out there rather
No,
than more
they just want a vehicle that looks. They don't mind it being quirky and different. They just want it to look normal. Like
mm,
the most successful EVs in this country
mm,
all look relatively normal. They just look like a normal car.
mm,
They're not trying to push out that they're an electric vehicle. They're different. They're
mm,
fancy, different colors, bright pink or whatever. They're just a normal car. The
mm,
Leaf, the Tesla,
mm,
and the Renault Zoe. They look
mm.
like and the the Outlander PHEV sold over
which
100,000.
which you have. I think that's one of your
Yeah,
daily
no,
drive as well.
I'm a big fan. I like the Outlander PHEV a lot, and
Mm,
I always have one in stock that I generally tend to pick that over everything else.
mm,
That's because I just like a 4x4. But
mm,
no, yeah, but they just look like a normal car. It
mm,
doesn't.
mm,
They're not pushing boundaries, or they don't look unusual and ugly looking or weird. No, that's it. Weird looking. They don't want an EV to look weird. They
mm,
just want it. They don't mind it being quirky and a bit edgy shapes. They just don't
mm.
want it to look weird. All they want. And lots of these new EVs, they started to go along like the weird route. And I'm sorry to say this, but the BMW i3.
I knew you were gonna say that.
Yeah, I've
Not in my color. I've got the Indesit silver.
I've grown to like the i3, and I think that's just because I've dealt with so many of them now, and I see them every day. But
they look like a pug. You know those dogs, pug.
People with the i3
acquired.
It's a Marmite car.
Yeah, it is.
They either love it or they hate it. But lots of comments I do hear about the i3 is it just looks weird. But
until you drive it, though.
Until you drive it, and then people love it, and then
the fit and finish to me, I actually prefer the fit and finish to the Tesla. And I've driven Teslas for miles and miles and miles, thousands of miles. I still feel that the fit and finish in the i3 is better than a Tesla.
Yeah, no, I do. Depending which, if you spec up an i3 really nicely with ProNav and I was just going to say sweet interior then, but sweet interior is a bit of a funny one because I always find after a year or two the leather tends to go a bit saggy and it loses its shape a little bit quite quickly.
Yeah, I have.
I don't know if that's something you came under warranty, but
what interior do I have? The one that's the mix between the leather and the.
Got the Lodge.
Lodge, yeah, the one in the middle. I think that's the best one.
Loft is the grey, or the very light grey, Karum grey interior.
Yeah.
Then I think the Lodge, the Loft, is it Loft? I always get confused between these. I should know this, but you've got the standard upholstery, then you've got I think the Lodge, then the Loft, then the Suite. I know the different colours, but the names I always get confused about.
Yeah, I've got the one just the one on below the most expensive.
Yes, below the Suite, which is the brown leather and fruit interior throughout.
Yeah.
If you so no, you are right. The i3. I agree with you. The i3 interior is quite a nice place to be, and if you spec an i3 up quite nicely, then it's the fit and finish is definitely a lot.
And that upright position as well, especially if you have the car in the city, the visibility of the i3 sitting in here and driving it is really good. Superior to any of the second-hand electric cars that and our top four.
Well, I was just going to get back on one thing that we kind of swayed away from was we were going to talk about the second-hand EV market of what we thought was like our 1 to 4 almost, or 1 to 5, whatever you want to do, or 1 to 3
in order.
So I'll go through after thinking about it for the last 10 minutes and looking at my bit of paper. I just quickly made a little note of what I've made. I just wrote down all the different makes and models that I could think of. And number one, I've got to put the Nissan Leaf as number one.
Why?
Before we go any further, this is my experience with customers who buy vehicles off of me. And
which Nissan Leaf though? Is it the 24 kilowatt or the 33?
No. So in a Leaf, you've got the 24 or the 30.
Is it 30? Yeah. Oh, so the BMW is 33. Yeah.
It doesn't. Well, if you were being really specific like that, then of course you would put the bigger battery model. I was just going to put the general make and model in general. So this,
all right.
And if I was being specific, probably a 30 kilowatt hour Tecna, which is the top
one, with the leather seats.
Yeah, because you've got the Vizia Ascenta and Tecna specifications in the UK for the Leaf. But the Tecna is definitely you get all the goodies with it: leather upholstery throughout. Bose surround system, LED lights, heated leather seats, heated steering wheel, 360-degree cameras. You just get loads for your money. So 30 kilowatt hour Nissan Leaf Tecna. Then I was going to go at number 2, the Model S, the Tesla Model S. Preferably, I know this is a bit of a trend actually, but preferably the new shape fascia one with the next generation seats. I really, really like them. But then this is where I just can't. I really can't put my finger on this. It's just for number 3. It does come down to. Well, there's actually 3 cars actually, but they could all have their different arguments. And I'm sure if you got 3 of these different owners in a room, we've been talking about these cars for the last however long. But you got the i3, the Zoe, and the Outlander PHEV.
Yeah,
and I'm going to make a case for all of them.
Yes,
and then I will eventually rule what I think out. The Outlander PHEV has sold a great number in the UK and is well regarded. But
and hated by normal BEV owners, especially when they just hog the charging station when clearly they can continue on their journey.
Yeah. Can I just ask? Do you just want second-hand EVs in general and PHEVs as well? Just the second-hand electric vehicle market?
Second hand, yeah. So obviously, this is for our audience that are thinking
Yeah.
about, what are the best second hand electric.
So I'm going to go off my experience with customers and
Yes.
what they buy and what I sell most.
Yeah.
Nissan Leaf is definitely number one
Okay.
for a start.
Hmm.
Number two, because I've actually just changed from what we've just said. I've just changed my mind a little bit. Well, I might give you another ranking order in a minute. But so the Nissan Leaf definitely number one. It's what I sell most. Preferably if you can get into a Tecna or an Ascenta spec, they're always the better ones to have over the Visia. The reasons why is I think in the Ascenta and the Tecnas you get the more efficient heat pump compared to the Visia. Also, you get the Nissan EV Connect system, the satellite navigation, and all of that stuff in the Ascentas and Tecnas over the Visia specification. Number two, in my opinion, then goes to the BMW i3. Again, it's probably the second car that I sell most of at my dealership. People always toy between the Leaf or the i3. If they have a little bit more money, or they've got a bigger budget, for example, they generally tend to go for an i3. I do get lots of people that come to my showroom actually that come and look at a Leaf, but then they go and look at one of the i3s and they sway towards the i3 because of like we mentioned earlier, fit and finish and the personalization that you can have on an i3.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I would say number three, it's actually quite tough actually. Oh God, it's between the Zoe and the Outlander, but I really like the Outlander. That's my problem. But in terms of, can I just put number three as both the Zoe and the Outlander?
Yeah, but you need to tell us why. You need to
Well, no, the Renault Zoes is just value for money and what they're worth on the used EV, second-hand EV market, because you can pick them up for really, really great prices, and lots of them are sold. But I would actually counteract my argument against the Zoe because they're on the used EV market, especially lots of the older ones that have been out for a couple of years now, or a few years now. There's a big, big thing about battery lease over battery-owned Zoes. Because there's a lot of battery lease Zoes on the market. So Renault did something a little bit different, or they did actually do it for a period of time with the Leaf, where they actually have this what they call the flex battery, where you actually have to lease the battery on a Renault Zoe. And especially lots of you can get battery owned Zoes, and the Renault did bring that out. And they're the I models.
Mm-hmm.
So on the back they have an I badge or whatever, and that means it's a battery owned one. But lots of the Zoes on the market are battery lease, and people really get put off with the battery lease on the Renault Zoes. It is quite easy to explain, and there is actually positives of having a battery lease one, but people just generally like to buy a battery-owned vehicle on the used EV market. So that's why I'm actually going to go for the Outlander PHEV as number three, because it's probably what I sell most of as well. But also it's a 4x4. It looks like a normal car. It has relatively okay range. It can do all of your short commuter distances, but you can do the long distances when you want. And even if you are using a petrol on the Outlander PHEV, it is still quite efficient for a big 4x4. So you do normally get about 45, 50 to the gallon out of a Mitsubishi Outlander around town. If you're going motorways and you're looking at probably 40 miles to the gallon, 35 maybe if you're quite heavy-footed. But for a big 4x4, that's not bad for a 2.5 ton 4x4 machine. It's really good,
Yeah.
I think anyway.
I mean, I can give you my top three right now, and I'll explain to you why.
Are you going to give me your top three like EVs or just second-hand EVs?
Second-hand EVs.
Okay.
Okay. So, obviously the first one is going to be the BMW i3. And the reason why is because one, the range is there. If you get the range extender version, you can get upwards of 200 miles. Is available to you either,
Yeah, but are you basing that off of the 94 or the 60?
I'm basing it off the 94.
Yeah, which is where the thing is with the 94s, they've only just started creeping onto the second-hand market.
Yeah, but they're there now.
But they are.
I saw one and I was surprised. And wow,
they're there, but they're still. Well, the one thing with BMW i3s actually is they hold their values
really well,
very, very well. Funnily enough, well, they do take a bit of a nosedive. So they've in the last 2 months, or about actually last month to a month and a half, BMW have released a flood, because BMW actually control the used market for BMW i3s quite heavily. and because they control the supply and demand, etc. And if they can control the supply, they can control the prices. So BMW i3 is actually artificially held quite high on the used market because BMW control the supply and demand, etc. And the 94s are still, I think I've seen a couple now, even if I go on Auto Trader, they're at the 24, 25k plus level. They were at the 26, 27, but BMW released quite a large supply onto the used market recently. So they have brought them down to about the 24, 25 level. Another 6 months, and I think you'll get closer to the 22, 23 level. And then they generally tend after that to level out. Like, for example, I remember I sold my very first i3 range extender a couple of years ago now. That was a 2014 14 plate BMW i3 range extender, not great spec. I think I sold it, it was like 16,995 at the time, like 17k if we just round up. But that car, if I look on Auto Trader now and look at i3 range extenders, the cheapest i3 range extender, 14 or 64 plate, they're still at the 15, 16k level for an i3 range extender, 60 amp hour. But I sold a 14 plate 2 years ago at 17k. Like, man, that was 2 years ago, and that same car is still worth. Actually, I think that car's probably now worth about 14, 15k on the used market, but they're still, for 2 years, that car has only lost a couple of £1,000.
They hold their value really well. Is the build quality, Lewis, is really good. And I think people, they see this weird-looking car with some really skinny tires, but they actually feel substantial on the road.
I actually think, they do, but the fit and finish is very good on the i3s. However, there are lots of, on the used market, and this is actually probably a bit of a tip if you were buying an i3 range extender, but on the early 2014, 2015 models, they did actually tend to have quite a few issues with them in terms of quality enhancements and parts that went wrong. So one thing that owners should always look out for when they're buying an i3 range extender, especially if it's an early 14 or 15 plate, is looking out that all the quality enhancements have been done on an i3 BEV or i3 range extender. So there was things like, I think I could probably list them down, things that I always check when I'm buying an i3, an earlier 14 or 15 plate model. They did actually tend to rectify these issues from about the 65, middle of 2015 onwards. So lots of the newer i3s have all, like especially your i3 Afeez, just will not have the problems because it's had the quality enhancements, it's got the newer parts from factory, upgraded parts. It was just i3s, they made them when they were, first new, they had a few teething issues. BMW then ironed these out, and then they were fine. And then, but there were lots of vehicles out there that came out, and they needed to sort them out. So they did issue recalls and quality enhancements on lots of the earlier i3s. So there was things like the reprogramming of the control units. Another issue that I found with the i3 range extenders is the tank ventilation line. One of the biggest parts as well is there's some parts called the REME, and again, these are just acronyms, but they're called the REME, the EME, and there's something else, the KLE. And what I think the KLE or lots of these parts were, is when from the range extender, the i3 range extender creates electricity for the batteries. Again, I will be stood to be corrected about on this, but the i3 range extender produced electricity, the little petrol 647cc generator, I think in AC form, but then for it to go from the generator then into the batteries, it has to be converted from AC to DC electricity. Am I right, or is it the other way around?
I think it's the DC. The battery is charged
in
DC
and then
DC.
to AC. So okay, well, I can stand to be corrected on this, but I'll give you a rough example. So there was the electricity is created in DC form or generated in DC form, and then it has to be converted over to AC form, and that's what I believe one of them three parts, the KLE or the REME, does. Actually, no, the KLE I believe does that. The REME, I'll just touch upon that in a minute. But they're one of and what happened was the KLE would be faulty, or it just wouldn't work efficiently or effectively, or etc. Or there was something, I think, with the REME where a lot of moisture was used to get built up, especially when the generator was producing electricity for the batteries. And what that would do is trigger lots of the sensors in the i3. So the sensors on an i3 are actually really sensitive. And literally you would have, the car would pop up with like a drivetrain error. It would come up on the screen. I don't know, have you ever had one of them before, Afeez, like a drivetrain error?
Yes, actually, I have.
on the range extender.
Yeah,
But
that's
the
the
thing
only
is,
issue I've had in about 2 years.
but the annoying thing is the drivetrain error could mean like one of 100 things or a couple of hundred things. So some people especially on the early 14 or 15 plates when they're out of warranty, some people get quite scared because they don't know what the drivetrain error is going to be. Could it be something that could be a little sensor that's just 50 quid in parts and labour to replace, or could it be a much wider issue where it costs a couple of thousand? And I was reading like an art on the i3 owners Facebook group. So one owner had some really major bill, and it was like a few £1,000s in parts and labour just to replace a part because his i3 was out of warranty. But that was on the earlier models, and if you hadn't had any of the problems rectified or you hadn't had the quality enhancements. But that's something I do as a dealership, or checks that from my knowledge of i3s and dealing with them. They're things that I only buy the i3s which are, or sell the i3s which have had all the quality enhancement. I do all the checks, I do all the background checks with BMW, etc. But I don't know, that's just a little bit about the i3 that I found, especially on the used market.
Wow.
And generally, because my customers are well researched, they generally
Yeah.
always ask me them questions about the reliability of the i3. But generally, lots of the newer i3s are incredibly reliable. It was just early 14 plates, 64 plates did have a couple of issues. And if they had not been rectified or hadn't had the quality enhancements, owners did have issues with them.
Yeah, and so for me, the second, so just going back to my top three. So the second car, electric car for me is the Nissan Leaf. I was very close to actually getting the Nissan Leaf before I went for the i3, but Nissan Leaf, wow, it was so comfortable to drive. I was given the Nissan Leaf for a week's test drive. So, Nissan, this was when they were still doing the 7-day extended test drives.
Yeah.
And, the drivability of it, was just so comfortable. It was surprisingly quick. You look at it and think, there's no way that this car can move as quick as, as it feels like it's moving. But it does get off the line pretty quickly. And the amount of amenities that you get on it as well, the leather interior, the subwoofer, the Boss subwoofer. It was a really nice car, but obviously I had to go for the i3 because it gave me that extra, range and just the look and feel of it.
And I think I touched upon like the 24 kilowatt over the 30. If you can get into a 30 kilowatt, fantastic. But even the 24 kilowatt on the used second-hand EV market, the 24 kilowatts are such incredible value for money. Especially if you try and get a Tecna over in a set, or Tecna or either in a Sentra or a Tecna, the value for money is incredible. So they start at, and preferably if you can get into a Generation 2 model over the Gen 1. Do you know much about them? The Gen 1s were the old like Japanese built Leafs, which were made from 2011 to late 2012, early 2013.
What's the difference between that and the 24 kilowatts that we have in the UK?
Yeah, so then I'll get onto that, but then after 2013, maybe some of the early 13 plate, but mostly post 63 plate onwards were the Generation 2 Leafs, which were the Sunderland built Leafs. But also they did a bit of like a facelift, or they did like a version 2 Leaf or over the Gen 1 over the Generation 2 model. The main difference is over the Gen 1 over the Gen 2. So in the Gen 1 you have the beige interior throughout, and there was only one trim level option. Where the Generation 2 Leaf, you then get suddenly Visia, Ascenta and Tecna. Also you get the darker black cloth or leather interior. That's one of the main differences over a Gen 1 Leaf over the Gen 2. Also the Gen 2 has the older battery technology over the newer Generation 2 batteries. One of the biggest differences is the heat pump in the Gen 2 over the old efficient heater or the old inefficient heater in the Gen 1, which makes a real difference. And I've actually just part exchanged a customer's just traded in a Generation 1 61 plate with me, and I was giving that a test drive yesterday, and oh my god, that heater takes up so much range. Like you turn the heater on and it sucks 10-15 miles range out of the battery straight away.
What? Wow.
Like over like 20% of the range just gone when you turn the heater on. Where the Gen 2 Leaf has the more efficient heat pump, and it's so much more efficient. It takes like 5-10% of the battery's range over a whole journey. So it's just a lot more efficient, and it means you can really do longer distances while having all your heating elements on, etc. It's just so much more better. So if you can get into a Generation 2 Leaf, the Nissan Leafs, the Gen 2 Leafs generally tend to start now at about the 7 to 8K level for a good lower mileage Leaf, a centre. Heading up through the ranks for a Tecna, you're looking at about 9, actually about 9 to 10, 11K now for an early 14 plate Nissan Leaf Tecna. But anyway, just generally, Gen 2 Leafs generally tend to start about 7K, or you can go up to about 12K for a Generation 2 Leaf now, normally on the used market. But then you can get into the 30 kilowatt stuff, which are just a lot more rarer now, and they are starting to creep through to the market. Lots of Nissan, like X demos, things like that. I sell X demo Leafs through my relationships with Nissan and things like that. And they're 30 kilowatt hour ones. They start at now 14, 15K now. The Ascent 3.3 kilowatt onboard charger ones. But if you want to get into a 6.6, you're probably looking at the 15, 16K level for a Nissan Leaf. But then when you start going up to the 30 kilowatt Tecnas or etc., you're then looking at, you're going into like the 16 to 18K level, and then you start getting into the BMW i3 range extender or BMW i3 then, when you're looking at spending that money. So it's a bit of a way up, really. Do you go for an older BMW i3 or do you go for a newer Nissan Leaf 30 kilowatt? There's a bit of a way up there. So.
Okay, thank you for that. And my last but not least is the Tesla Model S, for obvious reasons. I mean, and apart from my i3, the second most driven electric car that I've driven is a Tesla. I've driven it all around Europe, driven around Middle East, and even from London to Scotland, from London to Wales to Bristol, I have. So I know these cars like the back of my hands in terms of drivability, that is. Well, the range is there, but the reason why, Tesla is there for me as a top 3 is because of the infrastructure, the the supercharger network. The car, it's just amazing that this car came out 2012.
Yeah.
And the bigger manufacturers are still trying to bring out a competitor to the Model S in 2018, 2019.
Oh, absolutely terrible, isn't it?
It's terrible. I mean, over-the-air updates, the range is fantastic. The comfort level is great. The speed is just something else. The only reason why it's not number 1 or number 2 is because of the price. That's the only reason why. That's the only reason why.
Also, did you ever see that lots of people, like, for the money that you pay for the Tesla, the fit and finish just isn't the same as...
No, it isn't. It isn't.
So
and that as well. So the price and the fit and finish. But don't forget that because, they're still a relatively young company, only 13 years old. Yes, obviously, they should do more. Their quality control should be better.
It was mainly the fit and finish of the very earlier models, which lots of people kind of complained about. And then Tesla did start to, notice, and they did start to sort things out. So, I think they did the new shape fascia and whatever, but then also the seats, the next generation seats, they made quite a big difference on, and it just changed the aesthetics of the car. But then some people say, you hear lots of rattles in the Tesla. It's all
I've heard one or two.
And also the panel gaps. Oh my god.
Oh yeah, the panel gaps are not aligned properly.
I've got Teslas in my obviously in my showroom, and I've got a new shape fascia one at the moment, a 66 plate 75D, and honestly, I can fit my fingers through the panels. It's a bit. Some people just don't, and also lots of the welding and lots of the paint as well. Lots of people complain about that.
Yeah, and that's the problem, is it? Because if you're going to pay that amount of money, which can go up to, how much does a normal second-hand cost?
On the Tesla market, they're starting at about, if you want a good spec Tesla Model S, they got to the 40 to 45K level now. If you want a good Model S, an early 2014, 15 model, lowish kind of battery up to
75D.
Yeah, 75D. Or just 75 or 85 kilowatt hour battery. You can pick up at between the 40 and 50 level now. I have actually seen the odd, in recent weeks, there have been a couple of sub 40K cars. So some have been between the 30 and 40K level. But they've generally been higher mileage, 14 plate Leafs. Oh no, sorry, 14 plate Tesla Model S's.
with the AP1 autopilot one version,
Some
which
will,
obviously is still better than the
well, yeah, or
2.5.
some don't even have the autopilot. They have the hardware.
Oh yeah.
You could activate the autopilot, but
Mm.
so generally the ones which have been between the 35 and 40k level have been like above 50, 60,000 miles. They've been low spec. They've been the undesirable colours, the standard 19-inch wheels, no autopilot, etc. They've basically, I think most of them have been like taxi cars and things like that.
All right, so there's no cameras around.
No, no.
Okay.
So there's a very, very early models, but I don't know if you want a Tesla and you want a cheap, well, 35, 40k. Not well. It's not unreasonable, but it's you can definitely you may as well get something nicer like an i3 or because it's just the
But it
it's
depends,
the
though.
old Tesla tech.
Yeah, I'll tell you why. So again, going back to the use case, I had a friend one time that called me and said, "Listen, I want to get a family car. I have got two kids,
Yeah.
and myself, me, and my wife, and my two kids. We want a car, but however, I went for a test drive, for different electric cars, and Tesla stood out to me because of the size. So if you're a family man, the Tesla's going to appeal to you more.
Yes, it
But
will.
obviously, an i3, not so much because if you've got more than 2, 3 kids, it's not that big.
The i3 does have like ISO fixings and stuff like that, but then the
Yeah.
doors are a bit of a
Yeah.
they're a bit of not an inconvenience, but in certain situations they can be a bit frustrating sometimes. But it does actually provide easy access to me. I actually quite like the doors in there.
It's the kind of car you buy if you don't have friends or you don't want your friends to get in your car. He's like, I'm sorry, mate, I can't be bothered to get up. No, but it's okay. So I'm going back to to the Tesla.
Yeah,
I always liked the Tesla. It was the car that really introduced me to the EV world.
EV world.
Yes.
They're actually one of the most least appreciated vehicles on the market, actually.
Yeah, they do hold their value well as well.
The electric vehicles will. They actually hold their value. If you have the right spec and model, they hold their values very well. I've known like a year ago, like one particular model I saw, and then I saw it for sale again the same year, and it was the same money. I hadn't lost anything just because it was such a desirable model. I think it was an all-wheel drive model. It was top spec. Or it had all the good specs, etc. Next generation seats, etc. So,
That's great. And so one last question: if let's say I could ask you, when do you think the second-hand electric vehicle market will truly start to challenge the ICE internal combustion engine second-hand market? What year do you think that would be?
well, I've been of the opinion it's going to happen this year. I thought, or this year, I think it's going to or towards the end of the year, second half of the year, it's going to really take
that
off.
early to be able to have.
Yeah, I think so because
the second-hand market for normal cars, so I don't know,
just
thousands and thousands. I'm talking about having that volume.
Okay, volume won't be until lots of the longer range EVs come out, and then you've got to wait for them to come onto the used market.
So we're talking about 2 years normally after.
Yes, but in terms of actually used EVs on the market, most used EVs could actually perfectly do the job that most people's current cars are doing right now, because most people don't travel as far as they think they do. Also, they're in the same kind of money now as what people would pay for an EV. So you start off at the early Renault Zoes or the Citroen C0s, and they're at the £3,000 to £4,000 level, or you can go up to whatever you want, especially like Tesla level, up to 40, 50, 60k, or even like and beyond, of course. But so you've got there's different budgets for lots of different people, and there is actually now obviously lots of new makes and models, and within the next 6 months to a year, they're all going to come out onto the used market. So like the 40 kilowatt Zoe, they're just starting to creep on at the moment, even though they're quite rare. The Ioniq in a year's time, I really, really highly rate the Ioniq. Time. There's not as many EV or plug-in hybrid ones, but they'll be on the used market. The e-Golf in a year's time. One of the biggest ones, the Golf GTE, the BMW 3 Series PHEV. There's a lot of them on the used market, and they're great value. There's lots of different contenders out there. But I really think in terms of what I experience on a day-to-day basis, my inquiries that come through, everyone that I speak to, everyone is considering an EV or a plug-in hybrid vehicle, or they want to potentially consider an EV as an option in the next 6 to 12 months. Everyone I speak to, they all want to head towards that direction. And obviously, the more news and positive stories that come out, the more that come onto the market. Like even I think last year there was 300 to 400 on Auto Trader. Now there's 700 to 800 on the used market on Auto Trader. But I think used EVs second half of this year, going into early 2019. But I really think this is going to be the year for electric vehicles to really take off, I think, on the used market.
Awesome. Thank you.
So
awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
That's okay.
Louis. And just logging out right now. And so that is Lewis, Mr. Lewis Black of ecarstrading.co.uk.
Yeah, no, just you can find me on. You can find my website. You can find Twitter. Twitter's at ecarstrading, and that's all myself and my tweets. And you got my website www.e-carstrading.co.uk. Or hopefully, I'm sure there might be some future episodes of more podcasts. Hopefully, I'm sure we can really go into some really just detailed discussion points of the EV market. And
absolutely,
I'm happy to give my my expertise on the used market from my opinion. So
thank you for your time, and thank you guys for listening to It's Electric. I'll see you next time. Bye now.
Thank you for tuning into It's Electric. But if you like what you heard, go on to Apple Podcasts, give that 5-star review to Afeez, and let him know you love his show. Also, do Afeez a solid by going to teslarentals.co.uk to test out an electric car. That's teslarentals.co.uk. And for more on It's Electric, you can also look on itselectric.co. That's itselectric.co. After all, it's electric. It's electric. It's electric.